Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2, and today I wanted to have a bit more of a broader and in-depth discussion on the new Seasonal Modifier system that has just been added to the game as of this last week and latest update. Now, we already did a video kind of breaking down everything about the system, how it works, how the different modifiers interact, and it seems like a lot of you found that helpful, which I'm very glad to hear. But if you've been online at all, and maybe even in your own circles, this has easily, from what I've seen, been the most contested thing that the community has been talking about with this latest update, right? The new system that people are the most unsure about or the most split on. I would say, from what I've seen, it's about 50-50. Half the people are open to it, have enjoyed tinkering around with it, or at the very least see the potential of where it could go. Half the people don't want to turn them on at all. They want nothing to do with these modifiers. And yeah, that's where we're at. So the overall goal of this video is that I have feedback that I would like to share about this system, both from what I've seen other people talking about, as well as my own experience and thoughts on this overall system. Now, I was motivated to do this on my own, but I was especially emboldened and wanted to prioritize getting this video out because of a clip that we heard Yannick, the game's creative director, mention on a stream recently. So they did this back when Year 6 Season 1 launched as well, but Yannick actually went live with the Ubisoft News team the other day over on Twitch, and they were playing for, I don't know, hour and a half, and he was there just kind of answering questions, talking about the new update. And in there, he gave one specific comment about how they're kind of viewing the launch of this season, how they handle feedback in general, what their priorities are right now that the update is out. So I'm going to play it just so that you guys have the full context. The TLDR is just that at the end of the day, this was a big change in system to the game. They kind of knew that it wasn't going to necessarily be perfect off the bat. There is going to be iteration and feedback that needs to be implemented. And so because of that, I think it is important that we do things like this and get our feedback out there as much as we can. So take a look at his words quickly, and then we'll come back to what I have to say.
So Yannick, when a new season comes out, you launched it this week. Of course, y'all are. What does it look like for the team at Malmo when that happens? You're playing it. A lot of testing has gone into before launching it, but now you're kind of tuning into what the community is doing. Are y'all watching streams? What are the ways that you're learning how the thing is kind of hitting in the wild?
Yeah, I mean, usually we are. I wish we could play, but most of the time we are just, like watching streams. We are looking at conversations on Discord, on Reddit, online, everywhere. YouTube videos, YouTube comments. We're really trying to, we have our community team that's here to aggregate the feedback and feed it to us. But of course, we all want to see directly what people are saying. So you will see a lot of people that are just on their screens reading comments everywhere, left and right. And then, it's up to me and some people to go through all of that and then try to prioritize and see what are people saying, what are the most important things we want to address, what bugs are surfacing, and how do we fix them. So there's a lot of triaging and prioritizing that happens in terms of, okay, what do we do in the short term for the next maintenances? What do we do what do we do later? Especially with this season revamp, there's a lot of things that we just wanted to get it out there, because ultimately we can keep thinking and overthinking and rethinking all the systems, but the best test of this is just to put it out there and to let everybody play with it, because then we start getting the feedback, and that's where our job gets so much easier once we start getting feedback, because it gives us direction. So now we're in this part where all those systems, all those theories that we've been putting on paper in the past many months that we've been working on that, now we're just putting it out there, and we get to see if it works the way we wanted, and what doesn't work as we wanted it to, then we would be able to adjust. So this is probably one of the most exciting time when we're working on these kind of big features.
So, in light of everything you heard Yannick just mention there in that clip, again, I wanted to put this video out to collect some of the feedback that I've seen people talking about, share some of my own thoughts, and hopefully, collectively, we can move forward and make this system better. I personally still think this has a lot of potential. I mean, I'm mostly enjoying them as they are right now. There's some very big bugs that need to be addressed that we're going to talk about, and some changes I think, functionally they can make. But I do think there's potential here. And hopefully by the time we reach the launch of Year 6 Season 3 next season, or Year 7 Season 1, which is presumably coming afterwards, the overall flow of this will be much smoother, and all types of players in the community can feel better about one of these new things launching as opposed to what we're seeing right now. So let's get into it. For my feedback, I have 3 bugs to the current implementation to discuss, as well as 3 suggestions to how this overall system works that I hope to see added in the future. And as always, I don't expect any or all of you to agree with what I am going to say in this video. So as always, I would love to hear your own thoughts and reactions to the seasonal modifier system down in the comments below. So the first bug that I wanted to discuss was the implementation of the hostile modifiers to the game. I would say this is easily the part of the system that the least amount of people are on board with, and you know, rightfully so. They are pretty strong. Now the thing is, I've seen a lot of people say that they just want the ability to turn these off. I don't think that, personally, I don't think that's really going to work. As you can see right here, when you activate some of these abilities on our side, you gain immense power. Overall, this system is a net plus to how powerful we already are in the game, and before this we were already pretty darn powerful. So to remove the hostile modifiers altogether would just, in my opinion, make the game far too easy. What they introduce is a way to change how you play. You have to think a little bit while you're using these new abilities, and personally, I'm in favor of that. That said, there is one big bug that we have seen this season that has made, I think, their implementation a lot less favorable compared to maybe how it could have been, and that was the fact that the devs said these hostile modifiers were not all going to be active day one of the new update. The intention was that there would only be one active, and then as we gained power, as we unlocked our own things, maybe through the journey, or maybe a set amount over time, I don't know, they were then going to unlock the remaining 3 hostile modifiers. But what we saw day one of Year 6 Season 2's launch was that all 4 were there right off the bat. So it was a replication of what we saw on the PTS, where we didn't have our own power and abilities available. It was just the enemies had been buffed up, and we didn't really have anything to counter that. And that is what we've seen in this update, and that is part of why I think you've seen such a negative response to these, is because that's not very fun, that the enemies just get buffed up and we don't have any of ours. We have to go and farm our stuff. So for all seasons moving forward, I think it is imperative that they make sure that the system is working properly, to where we only have one hostile modifier active when the season launches. We then start gaining our power. The enemies then react to that by unlocking more of theirs. I think that is a much more fair implementation that is much more likely to get a lot more players on board. The second bug, and the one that I think needs to have the highest priority right now, because frankly it is simply unacceptable, is the fact that some enemy or hostile modifiers and enemies overall do not have the icons appearing above their heads. I have a clip of this that I can try and overlay here so that you can see if you haven't ran into it yourself. I know this specifically happens for Requital, which is the hostile modifier dealing with the shielded enemies at medium range, but there will be cases where enemies have that modifier active. The symbol is not above their head, but you can see that it is active, because as you can see in the clip, I will shoot that enemy, I'm getting the damage reflected at me, and I even slowed down to kind of test it and make sure that I wasn't going crazy. It is happening, and so for a system this new, with this much complexity and intricacy that I'm sure a lot of more casual players are just trying to get the grasp of, to have a bug where some enemies don't even show these insane abilities that they have on them, like I said, that's not acceptable. That needs to be fixed ASAP. So like I said, I really hope that they're able to get that one sorted out pretty quickly, because fixing that kind of stuff is the only chance you have to convince some of these people that this system is something they would even want to engage with in the first place. If we have to go on a guessing game as to what enemies' powers are and why I'm getting damage reflected back at me, that's not good. Alright, and then the last bug to discuss, although I guess it's technically not a bug according to the devs, but at least a way in which the current implementation works, is how modifiers function within group content. So as I'm sure many of you know, if you have wanted to opt out of the system, if you join into another group and somebody in the group has the modifiers active, it will then be active for you as well. And the even greater problem, and this part I think is for sure a bug, is that it'll do that, and even if you have them off, but again, someone else in your group had them on, so it's then forcing you to play with them, your side of them will still be off until you go and activate that, but the enemies will have theirs. So it's even more of a negative, because you don't even get the amplified damage from the base global modifier. At least that is how it's appearing visually. I can't say for certain if it's not happening behind the scenes, but it's all very complex and weird right now, right? So Daria, the game's community developer, responded to somebody over on Twitter, I'll put the picture up on screen, asking about this overall, implementation of the group functionality with modifiers. And she confirmed, as you can see, that's an intended behavior and not a bug, but it will be changed in one of the upcoming health patches to allow the leader to have full control. So off the bat, this is a good change, right? The fact that now one person within the group, specifically the leader, will have control over whether or not modifiers are active for everybody else. This is good. This means you don't have to have a guessing game going as to who still has theirs on. You have to try and message them to say, hey, turn these off. It just is very messy how it is right now. So that's a good change. However, I personally think they should go one step further and add additional visual indicators when you are matchmaking or joining a group to let you know that they have the modifiers active before you get in there. Because currently, if you matchmake for a mission or a countdown or whatever, you have no way of knowing if you are going to have modifiers active when you go into your experience. And for people who are completely trying to avoid the system, that can be very frustrating, right? So I think if they were able to add some kind of functionality to where near the group invite pane, it just said modifiers enabled or disabled, that would be a very useful tool for players to at least just be able to have additional information and to be able to decide whether or not they want to play in that specific group content. So those are the more 3 immediate bugs that we're seeing with this current system that I hope get changed quite soon. That last one is more feedback and suggestion, I suppose, but you get the idea of what I'm saying here. That's what I think needs to be focused on in the short term. But then additionally, I have some more suggestion and functionality-based things that I wanted to bring up. And whether those would then happen this season or whether we might not see stuff like this until future seasons and modifier sets release, I don't know. But regardless, I still think it's important to talk about. Now, the first one I wanted to bring up was the functionality of the requital hostile modifiers. That is the one that a lot of people are currently talking about. Now, look, for me personally, I'm okay with how it is, right? I see the icon, aside from the bug where it's not showing, which, like I said, needs to be fixed with the highest priority. But when you see the icon, I can recognize for myself, okay, don't shoot them within the medium range. I know I need to reposition and do all of that. However, I recognize that I'm a much more invested and hardcore player than most. So if a casual player is just trying to play with these modifiers and enjoy them, it is very tough to track those little icons, see, okay, don't shoot this one in the medium range or I'm going to die very quickly by reflecting my own damage back at me. And overall, whether they do make a change to requital during this season or whether it's simply for how they go about designing hostile modifiers for future seasons and modifier rosters overall, I don't think it's the best approach to have a mechanic where you are immediately punished for pursuing one of the very base functions that the game teaches you. By that I mean, the very first thing you learn in this game is shoot your weapon. You see an enemy, you shoot them. And so for that very core base interaction in the game, to then immediately punish you by reflecting damage back at you, that's not great. If I could snap my fingers and change how requital works in this very moment, I might consider doing something to where when you shoot an enemy within the medium range and they have requital on, it then has some sort of thing to where it supercharges the enemy. Maybe they get stacks the more you shoot them, the more you keep shooting them in the medium range, and that then gives them stuff like extra movement speed or damage resistance or damage itself. Then at least it's keeping a similar idea of if you see this type of enemy with this modifier, do not shoot them within the medium range, but it's not immediately punishing you for pursuing that base instinct that you learned as a player day one playing the game. You know what I mean? So that is one suggestion or piece of feedback that I would give when they're designing future hostile modifiers, is just to think about the more casual player in the experience. Again, I'm fine with requital for the type of player that I am, but I recognize that a lot of people are not going to be, and that's absolutely something that Div should take into consideration. All right, suggestion number 2 that I have to give for how these are implemented is the lack of a tutorial that this overall system had. I think that was a mistake, both in auto-enabling it, right? When you log into the update, the modifiers, to my recollection and knowledge, are just enabled by default. And so again, for people who more casually play this game, I mean, you can go and read the comments on the video I did kind of explaining the Season's modifier. So many people were like, thank you, I had no idea why I was just taking random damage and, killing myself when I was shooting this enemy. And some of that is due to them not going in and reading the thing in the menu, right? But that is also a symptom of there being no dedicated tutorial to go and do that. So in my opinion, the way that I think this system should work is that when you log into a new season, modifiers are disabled by default, right? Players should still have the same base experience of the game that they know, but then whether there is a little exclamation mark pointing them there or whether it's just whenever they discover it on their own, going into the modifier menu within your inventory should prompt a tutorial, whether that is text-based, whether that is something where they actually port you to the shooting range and you can actually test out some of the modifiers there and the game prompts you to see how those work. I don't know. Obviously, the shooting range idea would require a lot more work. I get that. So maybe that's not feasible, but you know what I mean. I think there needs to be a much better job done communicating what these modifiers are, how they work, instead of just relying that the player will know to go and look at the hostile modifier descriptions, read that, remember them. In my experience, learning is sometimes best done by doing, and I think if you give players the opportunity to test those out in a more safe and non-lethal environment, that could be very worthwhile. All right, and then the final bit of feedback that I want to give here for, again, future implementations of the system is that I do think it would be nice to have at least some kind of small little incentive for deciding to turn on and play with seasonal modifiers. Now, I know they don't want to do anything crazy because they don't want to force people to play with rule sets and mechanics that they don't enjoy, and I agree with that. If there were like global, like for example, if I were forced to play with the Polarity Switch global event for an entire season, I would be very upset, right? I would not like that. However, by choosing to not play with Polarity Switch, I'm missing out on a lot of potential rewards for those weeks when that is active, right? So it doesn't have to be anything big, but I think it would be very nice if there was some small incentive, nothing exclusive or anything like that, just an incentive for going in and turning on and playing with the seasonal modifiers. That could be something as simple as an extra little boost to your season pass XP gain, right? If you buy the premium pass, you get an inherent 10% increase to season pass XP amounts that you get. So what if by playing with the seasonal modifier, you got an additional 10% one? So that way, if you want to maximize your gains, you play with the modifier. Or if they wanted to go a bit more in depth with it, I think it would be cool to have some kind of system to kind of reminiscent of the global events back in the Division 1, where the more you play with the modifier and the more kills you get and the more XP you earn and all that, maybe there's some kind of leaderboard they track, and then at the end of the season, some of the top scorers with the modifier during that season get an exclusive mask or cosmetic. I'm sure people will have more pushback to that because they don't like to be locked out of cosmetic stuff, but I think that would be pretty cool personally. My overall point is, as opposed to the implementation right now where there's zero benefit to playing with them, except for some vague, maybe, benefit in the master difficulty stuff that we have coming up, which I'm still not fully clear on. It's not going to be required, they said, but apparently it will make the mission slightly easier. We'll see. Aside from that, I think it would be cool if there was just some kind of small incentive for deciding to partake in this big new system. And again, it's going to be something that is here every season moving forward. They're putting a lot of time into developing these new modifiers. Let's give players a bit more of a reason to use it. But there you have it, folks. Those are my 3 bugs and 3 suggestions for the new seasonal modifier system that we have in the game. As I said, there's been a ton of discussion about this in the community so far, a pretty even split on whether or not people are even liking it or wanting to interact with it at all. So I think it's very important to have these kinds of discussions and share our honest feedback on it. And I would love to hear each and everything that you guys are thinking, either in response to my own suggestions that I just gave or your own experiences with the system thus far. As I said, I'm sure many of you will feel differently about this than I do. I'm not the only opinion or player who plays this game, so whatever you are thinking, I would love to hear about it and read it down in the comments below. And yeah, based on what you heard Yannick say in that clip near the beginning, they just put this system out there. They've been working on it for a long time, but the true test is when you get it in everybody's hands, and now we're getting into that feedback period. So this is the time to say what you think, and we'll see what they change moving forward. I appreciate you all checking out the video very much. I hope you enjoyed and liked this kind of discussion format. And yeah, if you want to see more stuff like it on the Division 2 in the future, I'd be very appreciative of you clicking that subscribe button. That's going to do it for me today, though, folks. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, RogueGold out.